U.S. payrolls increased 235,000. That is the smallest gain in 7 months. Unemployment rate dropped 5.2%. Wages slightly rose, but really a lackluster jobs report and not a surprise to a lot of people.
A surprise to a lot of people and a lot of ugly realities that we're going to discuss very soon and dive into, because the unemployment rate for Black Americans, Jen, has risen, not fell. And the participation rate for prime-age women has also been dropping off. So there's a lot of people that are not really being a part of even the recovery we've seen so far. So let's bring in Bloomberg's U.S. economy reporter Olivia Rockman and Bloomberg political news director Jody Schneider to break all of that down. Thank you both for being here. Olivia, what happened?
So the Delta variant seems to be playing a huge role here. The number of people that were not able to work because of pandemic reasons actually rose between July and August. And then at the same time, we saw restaurant jobs fall off, retail jobs fall off. And so it's almost like a mini picture of what we were seeing in the earlier days of the pandemic.
And talk to us a little bit more about some of these numbers, Olivia. I mean, as we mentioned, there's that big headline number, 235,000, but dig into some of the other really big highlights that Sonali outlined a little bit for us.
So as Sonali mentioned, we saw the Black unemployment rate rise. Some of the reason for that is because more Black Americans join the workforce, which could mean that they're looking for jobs and haven't found them yet. So that's partially good news. But on the other hand, we know that Black Americans are disproportionately in restaurant jobs and retail jobs, and so the fall off there could also be contributing to that unemployment rate issue.
Jody, how is the Biden administration going to look at these numbers and move forward?
Yeah, I think we're going to see them spin this as the rate came down, so that, that's a good number. They're going to focus on that things are still, the economy is still strong and still recovering. But of course, they're going to have to look at the reasons why we're seeing that participation rate come down and no hiring in things like leisure and entertainment. And I think they're going to point to the Delta variant and say, this is the reason people should go get vaccinated. We've been telling you to get vaccinated. We're looking at boosters. I think they're going to point to what they're trying to do to keep ahead of this Delta variant.
Well, yeah. And Jody, I mean, let's just talk about something that we heard on Thursday night from Senator Joe Manchin, who was talking about that $3.5 trillion spending package. I mean, does this change the narrative then? Does this change the trajectory possibly for President Biden's, bill to get passed?
I think the Democrats, certainly in the House, where they control the chamber, and probably the administration, are going to try to use this as a way to say, look, we are not out of the woods yet. The economy's strong, but this shows you that it's very tied to what is happening with COVID cases, and that we need this infrastructure bill more than ever. I think we will hear that message very strongly from key Democrats, including President Joe Biden.
And I want to be very, very clear here that these numbers, even though the unemployment rate seems to be lower, these numbers are lower than every estimate that has been out there. Olivia, these numbers are also backward looking. Do we have any signs that the next couple of months or the next couple of weeks after this report have gotten worse?
As we've said throughout the entire pandemic, so much of these jobs numbers depend on the path of the virus. And so, as much as public health experts try to guess how long we're going to see the Delta variant here in the U.S., we don't know right now how long it's going to last. And so it could be that if the Delta variant is still raging in early September, mid-September, that the next report looks similar.
Olivia, can you talk to us about underemployment? Because I know there was also a drop in underemployment. Why is that significant?
It means that people are more often working part-time when they want to be working full-time. That could be because their kids are in school. That could be because they can't find a full-time job that they're qualified for. And so that just shows further weakness in labor market and hiring as well.
The one area folks were really excited about throughout the summer was leisure, hospitality. We're bouncing back, but there was zero job creation there last month, according to this report. What do you make of that?
This is sort of a last in, first out situation, right? And so since services are the hardest hit in the pandemic, they were the last to recover. And when the virus flares back, they're the first to be laid off or to show weakness. And so the Delta variant really does seem to be the issue here when it comes to that category.
And Jody, do we potentially see lawmakers shifting their discussion too on these added unemployment benefits, right? Because they're ending in just a few days. They've ended in a lot of states in some cases. I'm curious sort of how this jobs number maybe affects that narrative as well.
Yeah, I think you will see some Democrats certainly say this shows why we still need that support. That support is necessary, and there's some support in that infrastructure bill. So I think we're going to see a push for that. I don't think that's going to go very far with a lot of Republicans who are saying, hey, we really need to go back to figuring out how to get the economy stabilized without so much support. But it will certainly be part of the discussion, and this report will fuel that further.
Jody, you have many millions still unemployed. You have a very weak outlook here when it comes to this current report. And as you said, that there's going to be a lot of difficulty to drum up support for more unemployment benefits. So in the next couple of weeks and next couple of months, those benefits expiring, what kind of overhang does that create? What's the reality that the country is going to wake up to on Monday and Tuesday?
Yeah, there is, it's going to be a very interesting time both in the economy and in Congress, because you are going to see a whole new debate. And as you noted, Joe Manchin, a key Democrat in the Senate, has come out and said, I don't know that we need this infrastructure bill. Let's put the brakes on a little bit. So there's going to be a lot of discussion about this. At the same time, there is still plenty of potential for hiring. And I think that's the case Republicans are going to make, that, hey, people need to get out there and look for those jobs like we're seeing in the hospitality sector that have really gone wanting, and therefore they are going to want to put the brakes on some of that infrastructure and employment support spending. So it's going to be a real debate in September when Congress comes back in the next week or so as part of that infrastructure bill and as part of talking about the budget and the debt ceiling. That's all going to get wrapped together. It's going to be a really interesting September in the nation's capital.
You call it interesting. I call it very messy, Jody. Olivia, speaking of the potential for hiring here, wages. It seems like there's actually some interesting and good news there, but I'm wondering if you're seeing that people are raising wages and not hiring more.
We think that the increase in wages this month was actually because we saw lower wage jobs fall off. So because there were fewer jobs in leisure and hospitality and there were more jobs in professional and career services, that means the numbers are skewed and then we see a higher figure there.
Olivia, what does this potentially signal about what the Fed could do next? I mean, we were talking about Jackson Hole, I think it was a week or two ago. Does this give us any signal into sort of what's coming next from Jerome Powell?
The Fed has said they're going to try to start tapering asset purchases by the end of this year, but they haven't given a month of when they're going to start doing that. And so a lot of economists have said that given this week report, it's unlikely that the Fed will announce that tapering in September or October. It's likely that they'll wait till later this year when they can get their eyes on more jobs reports.
And this is, of course, I mean, Shonali, you're covering Wall Street every day for us. I'm curious, sort of based on what Olivia said about the Fed, how does Wall Street then interpret these numbers?
I hate to say it, but it's not a bad thing, because it means that the Fed is not going to necessarily take back their support right away. We know that tapering will impact asset prices. We know that low interest rates keep other assets higher, like stocks. So what it does is it doesn't settle the boat for a market that has been handing Wall Street a lot of money. And the jobs that are impacted are not, the jobs that are at this kind of white collar level, right? So that's the unfortunate reality. A very unequal recovery here, but for Wall Street, news is not bad.
Right, which is probably why we're not seeing a lot of movement with futures right now, but definitely something we're going to look out closely to. All right, Bloomberg's Olivia Rockman and Jody Schneider, thank you so much for your time.